Right triangle practice day 2. Solve for x in each of the following. Solve for x in each of the following. Round your final answers to 2 decimals. Now, first off, ladies and gentlemen, did you notice what I did there? I read the question. That's something you don't do very often. Read the questions. Solve for x in each of the following. Round the final answer to 2 decimal places. So here's x. I have several tools in my toolbox. I'm going to take a look at this. Let's see. The first thing I do is I find my 90. That gives me a hypotenuse. Fernando, see how I'm still doing the same thing? I was doing this back on day 1. I'm still doing it now. Do I have any other angles given to me? No, I don't. So the concept of an opposite and adjacent don't apply here, right? Because I'm not interested in another angle. So if all I've got is hypotenuse, and I'm after a side length, and I've given 2 sides, then the best thing to use is which tool? Yeah? You got it, Pythagorean theorem. We'll use the old guy in the bed sheets theorem. So let's see, it's hypotenuse squared, so it's going to be 19 squared equals 16 squared plus x squared. And if you get that wrong, ladies and gentlemen, everything else will be wrong and I'll give you no more marks. At this point in grade 10, I think you better be able to set it up right. I've explained it enough times, which goes where. It's time to get it right. Now let's move things around. It's your choice. We can change 19 to a number that you're more comfortable with if you really want to. And 16 to a number you're more comfortable with if you really want to. Don't forget that x squared. Now, I need x squared by itself. That's called isolating, getting it by itself. So that means I want to take the 256 and I want to get rid of it. How do I get rid of a positive 256, Fernando?
You might subtract it from the hypotenuse.
Well, to be honest with you, we subtract it from both sides, don't we? We're going to subtract it from this side, which is going to get rid of it. But to keep the equality, we're also going to subtract it from this side. So it's 361 minus 256 equals x squared. And how did I know to subtract it? Because it was the opposite of adding it, wasn't it? So now I've got 361. Subtract 256 is 105. Now, this says 105 equals x squared. Why don't I just say x squared equals 105? That's okay, I can do that. Now, is that the final answer? No. I now have to square root it. And 105 square rooted is approximately, not 100.
10.24.
Careful. Look at my calculator. See the 6? It requires you to round it up. So 10.25. And that is full marks. Now let's see how I'm going to mark this. I'm going to give you 2 marks for this and 1 mark for that, and it's out of 3. And to be honest with you, if you goof this up, you're going to lose 2 marks. That first line is worth 2 marks. Get it right. So moving on to the next one, let's see what I've got. I've got a right angle triangle. There's my 90. That makes this my hypotenuse. Notice nothing is given to me on the hypotenuse. I don't have a number. I don't have an x. So basically, I don't care about it that much, right, in this question? It's not that big a deal. I do have, however, an angle. And from that angle, this is my opposite side, and this is my adjacent side. Now notice I've done nothing towards solving the question yet. I'm just organizing what I've got, right? If you do this, you'll get it right. If you don't do this, you'll get it wrong. That's my experience. So, what have I got? I've got an angle, I've got an adjacent, and I got an opposite. So, opposite, adjacent. Which trig ratio uses those? Mackenzie? 10. Good kid. So it's going to be tan of 14 equals opposite over adjacent. 2 marks for that. Now, yesterday I posted a very specific video that I hope everybody watches at least once, if not twice. And it talks about how to handle it when the unknown is in the denominator. Now in this case, the unknown's not in the denominator. The unknown is in the top. But we handle it just the same way. I have a fraction equals a fraction. Your science teachers have taught you to cross multiply when that happens. Let's take a look what happens when we cross multiply. So I get 108, or 180, sorry, times tan of 14 equals 1 times x, which is simply x. The neat thing about that is you're done, because x is isolated. That's what's so cool about this setup. X is isolated. That makes us happy. Happy, happy, happy campers. Because all we have to do now is use our calculators properly, make sure you're in degrees, all of that jazz, and you're going to get an answer of x equals approximately 44.88. It's not degrees. The units are millimeters. This is a wonderful invention, by the way. I love this stuff. This stuff's great. All right. Questions, comments, hopes, wishes, dreams?
I should go home. I am way tired.
So what we have here is 2 marks for this line, 2 marks for that line. That's a 3-mark question. Goof up this line, you lose 2 marks. So unfortunately, I think what I'm seeing here is this question's worth 3, this question's worth 3. The most number of part marks you can get is 1. Okay, so you need to be able to do it right. Let's look at the next one. Let's break it up into what we have and what we know. So there's my 90, there's my hypotenuse. Isn't that a lovely thing? I have an angle, which that angle gives me an opposite. It also gives me an adjacent. Is there any further information about this adjacent? No. So you know what? I just don't care. Right? That adjacent doesn't have anything more to it, so I just don't care about it. What do I care about? What have I been given? Well, I've been given an angle, I've been given an opposite, and I want to find a hypotenuse. So which trig ratio uses opposite and hypotenuse? Fernando? Sine. So sine of 62 is going to equal 108 over x. Now, ladies and gentlemen, talking about that video that I posted yesterday that was entitled, What if the unknown's in the bottom? And the bottom is called the denominator. But for now, we'll call it the bottom because why make things difficult? So, it's in the bottom. This is a different type of algebraic question. I'll give you 2 marks for setting this up, but I'll give you 2 marks for solving it. 2 more marks. So just setting it up is only a pass. You want better than that. So what we do, this is a number. We put it over top of 1, just like we could any other number. Notice what we've created. We've created a fraction equals a fraction. Our science teachers have taught us to cross multiply. That way and that way. So let's do what they taught us. Now slow down and watch. X times sine of 62. So it's x times sine of 62. 1 times 108. Well, that's simply 108. We're not good to go right now because x is not isolated. This is not isolated, meaning it's not by itself. We need to get it by itself. Let me ask you a much simpler question. If I had 3x equals 12. How would you get rid of the 3? Pardon me? Minus? Divide in this case. You got to look at what the 3 is doing. The 3 is multiplying. The opposite of multiplying is division. So you would divide both sides by 3. I think once we review that, that makes sense to most people, right? And what's happening here is this 12 is 3 times 4 over 3. Do you see these two 3's? They're canceling each other out, right? Let's look at another one. Now, someone in the studio audience said to subtract by 3. That would be if it was this. Do you see the difference? This 3 is being added. So what we would do is take 3 away from this side, and we would take 3 away from that side. That's different than this. That 3 is being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplication is division. Okay, so that's how we're going to remember that. We're going to divide both sides by 3. And what's really happening here is 12 is 3 times 4 over 3, and those 3's reduce out. We good with that? That makes sense? Well, look at this. It's the same thing. X is being multiplied by sine 62. How do I get rid of multiplication by sine 62? Divide it by sine 62. So it's going to be divided by sine 62. But to keep the equality, divide it by sine 62. What happens is this sine 62 and this sine 62 reduce. That's why we did it. That was the whole reason for doing it. That leaves me with just x on this side. Grab your calculator. Do it in the right order. 108 divided by 62 sine equals, and I get an answer of 122.32 centimeters. And you may have to play with your calculator to figure out how to do this part, but you need to do that work and figure it out. You should pause this video right now. You should go back. You should cover this up. You should redo this question on your own, and you should see each step and make sure that you can do it. Okay? So take some time, pause the video, learn what you need to learn from that. Moving on to the last one. Let's see what I've been given. I've been given a 90-degree angle, which means I have a hypotenuse. They're talking about an angle. They haven't given me the measurements of it, but there's definitely an angle included in this question. So this will be, ooh, look, I went to call it opposite. That's wrong. This is adjacent. This is opposite. So let's see what I got. I've got an x, which is an angle. I've got an adjacent, and I got a hypotenuse. So in this case, I'm after an angle. So what uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Fernando? Cosine. So in this case, it's going to be cosine of x, though, right? Because it's an unknown angle. Equals 45 over 61. You're after an angle. That means that you must use the inverse of cosine. So it's going to be cosine inverse. I like to write out the ratio instead of the decimal because it's less work for me. And so using my calculator, it's 45 divided by 61 equals, shift on my calculator, cosine, and I come up with angle x equals approximately 42.46 degrees. And there she be. Now, ladies at home, gentlemen at home, what I suggest that you do is you stop this video and you go back and you redo each one of these questions. You cover this up with another piece of paper and you just do the questions. Make sure that you can do the algebra, check it as you go. Then when you're done that, flip over, do the 6 questions on the other side. We'll be back in a few moments.